Well, good morning. This is Kari Barron. I just love you. I'm so
Oh,
happy to talk to you today. So, I've been doing something a little bit different with my YouTube. I call it a podcast, not really podcast, just we have conversations. And I was doing this for a long time with a health coach friend of mine who worked with me for a while. So now I'm just trying to reach out and have conversations with other people, providers that I know and love and trust, and just find out what they do and get to know them a little bit. And so today I invited Kari. So,
good
Kari, tell
morning,
me a little
Teresa.
bit about yourself. What do you do? Who are you? And what's the name of your business and things like that?
So I'm a naturopathic doctor. I am not a medical doctor. My business name is called It Is Well, and recently moved to Arizona, but I take care of people virtually all over the US. And came into doing natural health kind of by accident. My husband and I both, right after we got married, had some health issues. I had a cough, broke my ribs coughing, antibiotics didn't work, did stuff naturally. Amazingly, when I actually did that, 6, 7 days later, I was fine. I had been sick for 45 days. And then my husband, 6 months after we got married, his warranty was up and he almost died. He contracted an autoimmune disease that was undiagnosed for a while. And then they saved him with drugs. And then a doctor said, just stop the prednisone. You don't need to take it anymore without tapering. And it almost killed him. And he was suffering for 13, 14 years.
Oh my.
I was a painting contractor. I did murals and faux finishes and plasters and things like that, stuff that I loved. I loved being creative and artistic. And when my husband, having been a city employee, realized I didn't have as consistent income at one point, he's like, I need to get a regular job. So I was applying to jobs left and right and found a job at a nutritional supplement company. And so that's kind of the impetus of me actually going into natural health as a career. And that was back in 2009.
Oh
And
wow.
so I work for the nutritional supplement company in their office, and I take care of practitioners like you and me and dealers. And because of that good, close relationship I have with people, if I had an issue with something, kind of like you doing this podcast, if
Yeah.
I had an issue with something and I know someone who's an expert in that, I could call them up and we're buds. We can get the answers for whatever we're dealing with a lot faster than if you don't have that connection. So I fell in love with natural health, and I've always been kind of that person that wanted to be a doctor, but I never wanted to see any of that blood and guts. Like I don't like it even when I'm watching House or something like that. I don't want to see any of that. I talk about poop and pee, but I don't want to see that kind of stuff. It's just I'm visual. Like, no, thank you. It's been a really exciting adventure, and I see how God's hand in what we went through when we first were married has made all the difference in how I can relate to my clients and help them on a deeper level, because they really, like you, look at things holistically. It's not just the physical body. We need to address emotions and spiritual aspects of life, social, intellectual, all of those need to be incorporated. So I really look at the entire person and work with that.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think, I tell people all the time, you don't have to go through something to be able to relate to people and help people. Or I shouldn't say, you don't have to go through something to be able to help someone, except that if you have gone through it, you can relate so much more. It gives you so much more credibility and
Absolutely.
relatability. And it becomes your why. It empowers me to help people who went through what I went through, because I know that there is hope when I felt hopeless a long time ago when I was going through it, you
What
know.
did you go through?
So for years I suffered with fatigue, brain fog, pain, unbelievable pain, to the
Mm.
point where I was nearly bedridden for a while because of the pain and the fatigue. I had such profound fatigue I couldn't walk up the stairs without not I was in my ex never had any issues with his health. So he's like, "Are you sleepy? Just go take a nap." And I'm like, "No, I'm exhausted. I feel like I'm wearing a lead apron, like the kind they put on, or a backpack of bricks," I used to say.
My that
And
that was what my husband said about his autoimmune condition. He said it felt like a pack of bricks. It
yep.
was dermatomyositis.
Oh wow. Yeah, I have a patient that we helped get well. She actually had to get through that before she could go through for her fertility. And then,
Oh,
and her baby is 5 months old and
oh,
amazingly beautiful. And
oh. You can
she's,
imagine what with you talking about feeling
yes,
like you had a, he said it was like I'm wearing a backpack full of bricks and I'm walking through the sand at the beach.
yes,
And I have to do that all day long and I never get to put the backpack
yes,
down.
yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. Almost
Oh,
verbatim what I used to say. And of course, like you go to the doctor and you do the blood work and there's nothing there. Everything's fine. You look normal. Well, I'm like, I don't feel normal. And so they would go, here, take this medicine, take that medicine. Like 5 medications later, I gained 80 pounds and I felt worse than ever. I was just awful. I went from being able to work out all the time to not being able to do anything. I was an ICU nurse. So I had to stop working for a while. And so I do like the blood and guts, just so you know.
I love nurses. It's not something that I can do in an emergency. You want me to take care of you because I'm fine in an emergency, but
Yeah.
just to see it, not my
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
No,
not
I get it.
interested in seeing that if I can help it.
Yeah. It was for me, it was finally somebody gave it a name, and at the time it was a real sketchy, nobody like really like it was a catch-all, dump everything else that you can't figure out into the bucket. It was
Yes.
fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, and it really didn't have a lot of credibility. People thought that if you were, and I literally heard a doctor at work say this about a patient coming in through triage, and they were up to take them person into one of their rooms, and he said, oh, crazy, lazy, stupid, or drug seeking. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I like, no, I didn't talk about my things at work, so nobody knew that that's what I was going through. And because I would just like pump through my 12 hours and go home and crash, and I thought,
I
oh
had the
my gosh.
doctor that was treating me for my cough said, just take the antibiotics, you're die.
uh,
He goes, you're just not being consistent. And if anybody knows me, they know if I make a commitment to do something, it will be done.
yeah,
And I was absolutely doing everything that I was told to do.
yeah,
But it wasn't bacterial. I asked him, will you please test to see, just do a culture to
yeah,
see if this is actually bacterial? Because an
yeah,
antibiotic isn't going to help with a virus,
right.
or if it's fungal or something like it, wouldn't do it,
Oh my,
would not do it. And he said, and I just was like, thank you. Gave me another prescription. I walked out of the door and I never went back.
yeah,
But I
no,
broke ribs, 2 ribs,
yeah.
coughing so bad. And he didn't give a crap about me.
That's so sad. I just that's also part of our why, like we
Mhm.
want to have listening ears, we want to have understanding hearts and care, like there's a level of caring. Like most people who get into healthcare start out with a caring heart, and a lot of people become jaded, especially in Western medicine. They become really jaded and kind of disgruntled about what they do, and there's no passion in it anymore. And so I think that that is the absolute opposite of where you and I come from. That we,
We come from the passion and it led us to instead of,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And it intensifies. It's funny, I was just thinking about that because I was telling you earlier that I had just gotten up, did my devotions, spent some time in prayer, and then got ready. And it's very early for me compared to
yeah. So you're
normal.
3 hours
As you can
earlier
tell,
than me.
my
It's
voice, as I
9:30.
use it, it gets a little bit higher instead
Yeah,
of like froggy voice in the morning.
yeah,
But I pray for my clients.
yeah,
I pray for those people that I am serving because I have a passion and a love for them because that's a big deal to me.
yeah.
And you were asking earlier about, we moved from Waco to Phoenix, and when we were in Waco, we always do home renovations. So that's why the backdrop, because my home is really crappy looking right now because we're demoing and restoring and all of that kind of stuff. And in Waco, we did the same thing. We actually had a house that was on Fixer Upper, the TV show. And
Oh,
it was, if you want to see it, season 2, episode 6, it was one of the reject houses. It was the Neat and Tidy Ranch. And we had this, like you were talking about the stupid design of your office that before you redid it.
yeah.
We had a 12, no, 14-foot dining area that was more of kind of like a hallway. And there was this big old huge shelf in that was on like on the window. And I'm like, why would you do that in this little narrow dining room? So we're demoing stuff and taking molding out and doing this and that. And I'm like, I'm going to cut that sucker. So I took my it's a little circular saw, that's a little tiny handheld one, went through and did that. And after I did that and took it out, I was like, I should have tested that for lead
Oh,
because it was painted. And I thought, well, oh well, what am I going to do about it now? And that was on Saturday. By Monday, when I was, getting ready for work, I was doing some training and I couldn't think. My mind was working. I knew what was going on, but I couldn't articulate.
yeah.
And I thought, crap, I must have lead poisoning. And I never tested it because it's like, what good does it do to test it at this point? I know I'm having those symptoms
Sure.
of having lead poisoning.
Sure.
So I pulled out my good old detox program and checked with my expert. Like, we got those little experts that we rely on, older gentleman in upstate Washington. And I said, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And he goes, okay, well, I would do it this way. Gave me a little more direction on it. And I did some of the foot baths that I use in my heavy metal detox. And one foot bath made a difference. The second foot bath, I was like, okay, my tongue is loose again. I can actually talk. And you can't do it every day. You have to do it at least 48 hours apart.
Yeah.
And it's a very specific program, but I saw such amazing results.
Wow.
And since I muscle test, I could tell how much mercury that I had in my body. It's the only accurate way to check how much mercury and how much lead. And mercury is the gatekeeper of heavy metals.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that all of those silver fillings in their mouth, dentists that take out silver fillings that are educated in it don't realize that when you disrupt that, you've got this mercury vapor going through the body and it goes into your brain, your nervous system, it goes into your lymphatics, your reproductive organs, and it covers your oxygen receptor sites. When you cover those oxygen receptor sites, how do your cells get oxygen?
Yep.
And the affinity of oxygen to those red blood cells is 1:1. So they like each other. It's like a good little magnet, holds together. The affinity for carbon monoxide, think about someone wanting to kill themselves or, being exposed to carbon monoxide and how dangerous that is. That's 2,000-1.
Yeah. That's why when someone comes in with carbon monoxide poisoning, we put them on 100% oxygen and keep them on that to push that carbon monoxide off.
But you should be using binders to grab onto that too, because if charcoal won't do it.
Yeah.
Charcoal's not strong enough to grab onto that carbon monoxide, but mercury's is in the thousands.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the priority of the body, because that affinity is so strong, it's shoving that oxygen right off. You have this mercury vapor going through when you're having mercury fillings taken out, unless you have a literally smart silver mercury amount, or it's actually a designation, SMART, because it's an acronym. But unless you have someone that's a smart person and you have detoxed before, you're going to have this buildup and you're going to feel faint. You're not going to be able to think and you're going to be exhausted. You may pass out. And that's what happened to me the first time I had ever done mercury detox. I passed out because someone told me the wrong volume and too much got disrupted.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's one of my big deals for a lot of my clients is heavy metal detox.
Yeah.
Because you have to get the mercury out before you can get all the rest of them out.
Yeah. That it's amazing to me how mercury is classified toxic before it enters the body. It's a biohazard waste, right? Or it's toxic before it enters the body. After the body, it's a biohazard waste, but in the body, it's okay. It's safe. Except that when we chew and mastication, we chew on our food.
And heat.
And heat. And all that friction and rubbing, and those vapors just keep getting released day after day, over and over and over. And our brain is right next to our mouth. So all that gets stored in our brain. And then that's why we have all the neurological symptoms. MS, I mean, MS and Parkinson's are extreme, but that, like a lot of the.
But how quickly do we have these things, the foundations of illness that are being built upon?
Yeah.
And people think, oh, I don't have silver fillings. I got those out years ago. Have you done a heavy metal detox?
Right. Where did it go?
Have you done an actual detox? And it won't show up in blood labs.
Yeah, no. I tell people if it shows up in blood labs, oh, Houston, we have a problem.
We have something immediately. Well, that's what I'm saying. Those binders, if someone comes in mercury toxicity, you have to use those binders. But if let's say you're married to a dude that has a mouthful of silver fillings and you guys sleep in the same bed at night, you may not have any silver fillings, but what happens at night? Detox.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And as the lungs are
Big
expelling
excretion.
between 3 and 5 in the morning,
Yeah.
you are exhaling, the main key is exhaling mercury. You
Yep.
are inhaling mercury. So
Yep.
it's not I didn't do this. You're exposed all the time. So that's why a lot of my passion is with heavy metal detox, but people don't realize that that's what's causing it. Like they just, well, like you were saying, I had brain fog, I was exhausted, all of those could be mercury issues,
Yes.
be other things too, but the big culprit that's actually fairly easy to get rid of is those heavy metals.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it for sure. And so one of the things I tell people too, was actually having this very conversation with a patient yesterday. She's in her 30s and she never had amalgam fillings. But we did a heavy metal test, like a provoked urine test. And I said, um, did your mom have heavy metal? Does your mom have amalgam fillings? And she said, oh yeah, lots of them. I said, well, there you go. Because we don't realize, I've definitely had seen testing side by side where the mom had extreme high levels of lead because her mom had lead. And then that same person had high levels of mercury because of the amalgam fillings. And the son, who had never had a filling, never had anything, had extremely high lead and mercury because of the mom passing it down to the son. And
Yeah.
so, just because you haven't had amalgam fillings doesn't mean you're not getting exposed or haven't been. And sometimes it's from the parent.
Well, and you also have seafood if you eat seafood.
Right. Yep. Especially tuna.
And if you walk outside, because I do muscle response testing and I do a bioresonance form that I can do. I actually do little flick tests.
That's
There's
what I
different
do.
ways to do it. I do a
Yeah.
flick test.
I do called it the flick a boogie. Yeah.
You do this. You're
Yeah.
the only one that I know of all of the people that I know that does
Yeah.
the flick test. Everyone
I
else
find
does
it to
these
be,
little,
yeah,
it's super easy.
yeah, it's very
But
easy.
with testing my clients that are still in Texas because we moved, I think every single one of them that I have tested lately is high in uranium.
Oh, wow.
Now, where are they getting uranium? They're not intentionally ingesting that. That's not easy to get in food or something like that. The chemtrails.
Yeah.
So being aware of what toxins your body has, I love the Cellcore products to use for the binders because they really do grab onto stuff, but you can't rely on those binders. You have
Yeah.
other things that you need to do too.
Sure.
Foundational stuff always has to be in place
Yes.
first.
Yes.
But the fact that we get all of that crap
Yeah.
from the clouds, they're not natural.
Yeah. No, no. I remember a day when you could look up and see clouds and not lines
Yeah.
of things.
The other day I saw this pattern and I'm like, that is not real. And my husband, oh yeah, it's clouds. It's all spread out. And I'm like, dude, do you see the lines? It's like a waffle. It's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah, I know.
we don't always agree, but he's an amazing man and I absolutely adore him. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, there's definitely a disparity sometimes in relationships with people in healthcare. Let's just put it that way.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Because they don't know what we know. So you mentioned foot baths, you mentioned supplements. When you approach treating someone, where do you start? Like, what kind of testing do you like to do in the beginning?
So it depends on the person. I have a really extensive questionnaire that they go through. And with that, I look, okay, do we have a lot of stuff or is there something that's clumped? And I find that everybody has a lot of stuff. I deal mostly with women like you. They were exhausted, emotionally spent, and doctors saying your labs are all normal. So I will do different types of testing. I always do a full thyroid panel because thyroid is one of those things that goes off so easily because it's a lower down organ. People don't realize how it is affected by so many other organs.
Mhm.
So do full thyroid, I do saliva cortisol because that tends to be something they need to be aware of. And organic acids, environmental toxins, and I do food sensitivities and allergies.
Mhm.
So I don't make people do all of them. I just go, okay, what do we think we need to be paying attention to? My husband and we both had a little bit of digestive issues lately. I think it's more stress than anything, but I went to a new company for doing allergies
Mhm.
and they do a large number of allergies. And I said, let's get this tested. I'd rather avoid something and it's worth the expense for me to
Sure.
avoid something if I need to for a while until I can get rid of the allergy, because you can get rid of allergies.
Yeah.
Nothing. Neither of us had any allergies. I'm like, did I just waste how much money to check it? I'm like, no, I didn't waste it. I know that there are
Now you
not
know.
food sensitivities.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, okay, what else do we need to pay attention to? And I know it's the demo that we're doing here at the
Sure.
house and the stress levels
Yeah.
of, all of the changes that take
Yeah.
place. But I always, it sounds so silly, but anyone who ever talks to me, my first question, how much water do you drink?
Yeah.
What kind of water do you drink?
Yeah.
Are you guzzling it all at once? Are you sipping it throughout the day? Are you, like I asked a ton of questions about water and people look at me like, I don't think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, but that's what I think about. And then, go into those foundations. If I am talking to someone that is experiencing those things that you had said, I will always do my little flick test to see, is mercury the biggest thing we need to pay attention to? If that is so, then I will get them on those foot detoxes
Yeah.
as quickly as possible, but they have to be at that good water level.
Yeah.
Because you can't have anybody do detox until at least they're getting enough water.
Yeah.
The foot bath is great because you put zeolites in the foot bath, and it's not an expensive device you put in it. It's literally what I've used and it's Walmart styrofoam coolers.
Oh, wow.
It's not hard. You put a trash bag in it to line it, and then you have to keep it at a certain temperature. But I will have them do that because that is a super quick win for them.
Yeah.
They will feel different.
Yeah.
I have clients that I haven't seen for years that are asking me, hey, can you send me those drops for the foot bath? I know I need to do it again. I've
Wow.
educated them so that they take care of themselves and they're like, I know I need to do foot baths again. I'm like, okay. So I start always with those foundations. And depending on what showed up in their labs, I'm like, okay, we all have to do some form of detox. Sometimes we add other things in it, but I don't pile people full of a lot of supplements right off the bat, because until those toxins are out of the way, it doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
You have to take so much more
Yeah.
and it's not getting absorbed and utilized. So why have them spend that money on that? Let's have them spend the money on the detox and do that investment in detoxing their body and then move forward. And then when we get stuck, there's different tools that I'll use. I'll suggest coffee enemas. I actually really, really like coffee enemas personally. I bought my enema kit and it took me 6 months before I ever did it because I'd never had an enema in my life.
Yeah.
Nurses, they understand the value of enemas, and a lot of people grew up having a mom that did enemas. My mom never did anything like
Yeah.
that. She didn't want to deal with that. She's like, here, have some fruits. I don't know. And so coffee enemas can be a really great tool to get your liver moving. And for the first time, because this was another fear of mine, I did a liver flush.
Uh-huh.
And I had stuff coming out of there. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was like this big of a green stone that came out. I'm like, all right, I guess I need to do these a little more often.
Yeah.
But I use a ton of different things. And also I use in every first appointment and following appointments, I do Bach flowers for them.
Oh, good
Because
idea.
that emotional aspect is so powerful if they're open to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
the
that's
Bach
great.
flowers, you don't have to think about it and they work. I've used them on dogs. We had a
Yes.
barky dog next door at our house when we lived in California. And that poor guy was just lonely. So I put the right Bach flowers in it. My son was all scared to put it in his water. I'm like, dude, if there's any problems, I take full responsibility. There wouldn't be any problems.
Yeah.
But we trained him by putting those drops in the water to not be scared at night. If he barked, we're like, Jack, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
And he was fine.
Oh.
I use a lot of tools. I love homeopathy. I love certain supplements, herbs. I actually do a lot with energy techniques too. So like for your emotions, each of your fingers, I have a video on my YouTube. If you go to Dr. Kari Barron on my YouTube, each finger has different organs and different emotions with each of them. I was telling you earlier, I was very mad about something that happened yesterday. So what was I doing? I was holding my middle finger. And what is that organ? The liver and the gallbladder. So holding this when I was trying to go to bed and I was mulling over something that I shouldn't have been all frustrated with.
Yeah.
But I'm holding on to that finger and it's not a death grip, but I use all kinds of tools, even just have them read scripture aloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm kind of a wing it girl.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
How
love
do you
that.
start off? Do you do a bunch of labs? Like obviously because of being an ER nurse, you pay attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the beginning, what I usually start with is blood labs, and I do bioresonance testing, and I test for all kinds of toxins and environmental and heavy metals and stuff, mold, parasites,
Lines, all of that kind of
all
stuff.
bacteria, all that. And we start there, and then and huge intake form, big intake form, because I want to know what their exposures have been. And then from there, then I choose specialty testing, organic oats. Maybe I'll do a salivary hormone, like a Dutch test, stool analysis, GI effects kind of thing. I'm trying to think. Oh, and food sensitivity. Oh my gosh. Almost always I test food sensitivity just to see most people if they have any kind of asthma, allergy, rashes, anything like that. The headaches, body aches, a lot of times it's correlated with food that their body's
Well,
just
and their
sensitive
gut
because of,
permeability is so
yeah,
evident if you see on their sensitivities that everything they're eating is on the food
yeah,
sensitivity, it's like,
yeah.
dude, you got some integrity issues here in the
Yeah, well, it's
intestine.
right. It all stems from leaky gut or intestinal permeability because everybody has a damaged gut. Because if anybody eats anything that's not organic, they're getting exposed to glyphosate, and that's really damages the endothelial lining in the gut. So
Yeah.
almost always that when I first come, I put almost everybody on an elimination diet just to take away the big culprits. And then a lot of people come back and go, wow, I feel so much better just not eating certain things. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty telling. Yeah,
Yeah.
imagine that. So I do that. And then down the road, I don't always address emotions right away because some people have the buy-in, other people don't. But if I see that we're doing everything right physically, then I go back up and I remind them, look on your questionnaire. We talked about this. You've had this trauma, you've had this stressor, this is ongoing. Now, what can we do? And I'm trained in something called neuroemotional technique. I'm certified, but you have to be in person. And you and I do a lot of telemed, but there's other things that we can do. Tapping, I teach tapping sometimes, and emotion code, things that we can do that can help without us having to be there in person with them. Yeah.
Right.
And teach
Yeah.
them the power of fasting and for women eating according to their cycle. Yeah, there's
The
lots of
fasting
things.
thing is one of those I think a lot of people dive into too quickly. And I find most of the women that I work with, they've been fasting, but their adrenals are so thrashed they
Yeah.
can't.
Yep.
And they push themselves so hard because they think that fasting is the way to go.
Right. Yeah, I
Like
usually don't start there.
every person is different.
Yeah.
Every person is different.
If you're a good provider, you listen to the person in front of you. You're paying
Yeah,
attention to them, and everybody sitting in front of you is different.
absolutely.
Now, granted, we try to keep our who we're speaking to the most to be a certain kind of person. But even within that, so say if I'm dealing with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, they're having those symptoms for a bunch of different reasons. So even if that's like the thing that they're coming to me with, they could have gotten there for in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just have to be real. Everything has to be real individualized and real unique to whoever is in front of us. And that's why actually I didn't realize until I looked over your bio, like we went to the same school. We have the same training. So,
Oh, how funny.
and I love how they equipped us the way that they did, So they changed the designation to traditional naturopath. So that's what I refer to myself as. And
Yeah, I
also,
got it just before, like I was in the program just when they were changing it. I'm like, no.
yeah. Well, actually, if they had kept it Doctor of Naturopathy, I would have not used that because of my license as a nurse
Right.
practitioner, because that would be a little too confusing because I'm not a medical doctor, not even a doctor of nursing practice, which is what a nurse practitioner can be. So I like to just say traditional naturopathy because that just goes into, I was trained in herbs and homeopathy and Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine and
Iridology and how do you do
iridology
that?
and
What do we look
tongue
at when we're
face
looking at
reading.
someone's face? Yeah.
Yes, tongue reading.
Yes. Yeah.
And I
All
could
of that.
sometimes look at people and
Nails.
go,
Like we
yeah,
look at everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything, hair, nails,
But
everything.
we don't do that unless it's a client. And I think that's one of those things that needs to be said quite often.
Yes.
I'm not analyzing everybody. Like they're like I will see an older gentleman at the store and there he's got like the big sponge bulb nose. And I'm like, ooh, he's gonna have a heart attack. What's going on with his cardiovascular
Yeah.
system? But it's that kind of a thing, not like being critical of somebody that we're looking at.
Yeah. No, for
Yeah.
me, it's usually when I see the picture or I see them smile and the one eye goes closed, in Chinese medicine, it's mother and father. So it depends on, oh, what are you trying to
Uh,
hide? What's going on behind the scenes? It actually can be kind of helpful when you notice that and you're having a conversation with a patient because you're like, because it raises my awareness. I can tell something's going on in here. And so I'm just looking for the right opportunity to have that, open up that conversation. Or
yeah.
I can't help it when I see people out and they've got these lines across here. I'm like, oh, you got gut issues, baby.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've got the lines right here, the liver thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Are you an angry person that has, natural person?" And they'll walk up to me, "Are you an angry person?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. But I'm frustrated with myself.
Yeah.
I'm not, it's not external, it's internal."
Yeah.
And so I've been working on that and then doing that liver flush recently and seeing what came out. I'm like, okay, I need to do more of those. But I like they say to give yourself 2 to 3 days. The first one, I gave myself 3 days and I totally needed those 3 days.
Yeah.
Second, and I did a second one and it was 2 days that I gave myself, but I really needed 2.5 days.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, okay, I just need to set aside 3 days every once in a while to do those kinds of things. But I have noticed that this
It goes
isn't always
away.
defined.
Yeah.
Well,
Mine
I
used to
had
be
one
really,
point where
really
it
prominent.
was going away completely and then had issues come up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, mine comes and
Yeah.
goes. It was really, really prominent along when I was real
Yeah.
sick.
But this is what I always pay attention to on myself. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, what
Yeah.
am I frustrated with? And that's why it looks so lovely this morning because I was
Yeah.
frustrated last night.
Yeah.
But
I can't tell.
it's all good. Oh, Teresa, we have so much fun talking together. Why do we live so far apart?
I know, right? Well, we're gonna see each other next week, right?
I know, absolutely. And that's
Yes,
the
I can't wait.
best. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.